Well, can he? He can.
Yes,
He's
he
gonna show you today. This is the Big Finish at Lincoln Lodge. We're about to get it on the show. So come on, everybody, and get the show on the road.
Let's get it on the road.
Hello.
Shoot. Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning back in to The Big Finish. My name is Jamie Schreiner, and I'm here with my hot, beautiful, hilarious co-host,
Becca Kenny.
Yes, and we're here at the Lincoln Lodge recording. This is going to be a 2-episode recording day for us. It's going to be pretty iconic. We also famously went to Menasha, Wisconsin together a few days ago, Beckett and I.
Yes, Menasha, Wisconsin.
Reliving just a couple of road doggies, just out on.
Absolutely. I've been roading it up. I've been gigging it up. I did a this month I've been to Milwaukee. Actually, my partner was doing a show in Milwaukee, a drag show in Milwaukee.
But still,
you
still went. So.
I still went. I went to Davenport, Iowa to do a show. I opened for Chelsea Hood there, and then I did on Wednesday I went to LaSalle to do a to perform in the middle of a drag show. It was a bingo game.
Oh no, but I will say I saw those pictures and it looked like you were just beloved among the audience.
I did
there.
murder, crush. Here's what I'll say though, is there was a certain table of younger people who really were my rock for that show, because there were some older people that during a few of my jokes were
oh no,
looked a little angry, a little pissed. I don't know that a bingo crowd is my ideal demographic. The one table, it was kind of perfect because I feel like they are it was small town, not that LaSalle's not that small, but it was smaller town queers who probably don't see people talking about blowjobs in front of their people who are their grandparents' age.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the thing, is it's you can be queer in a small town, but that doesn't mean you're not repressed a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I feel like in the end, it's we talked about this in the car a little bit, but it's always you go to those towns and that's the people who come to you after and be like, thank you so much. But you're watching them react to the show and you're like, I don't feel like you were grateful. When I was watching you, I feel like especially older people at shows, when you say really, really bold things that they're not used to hearing people say out loud in public, their faces will be complete, oh, and then they'll come up to you after and be like, oh my God, that was so brave. I loved it. It was so funny. Thank you. And you're
sometimes, typically I'll say that typically the people who have mean faces during my show don't come up to me afterwards and say they're saying nice things. Typically, I feel like I do have a pretty good read. I'm you like this, you didn't like this. I did in Menasha, I did have somebody come up to me after the show. Famously somebody came up to you. It's funny because I told Hunter the day before, I'm it's crazy, I've never had somebody say anything about my military joke, because I have a joke about how I don't want to be in the military, and it's
a very funny joke.
Yeah.
As me as a bystander, I will say I want you to tell the story of what actually happened, but I was on stage while Beckett was speaking to this person, and I, in the back of my mind, we're in a small town in Wisconsin, and I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? Is Beckett okay? And I'm trying to do my set, but I'm also in my peripheral, because I saw her at the bar talking to you, and I was worried. I was like,
did she look mad?
Well, just her back was to you, and her head was she looked passionate.
Oh yeah,
she looked passionate for sure, and I was like, what is going on? And I just kind of had to ignore it and hope that the other people that were working the venue had it under control if it was out of hand, but I just didn't know what was going on.
Well, so I went back to my table, and then the woman was talking to one of the managers at that venue, and
speaking to the managers,
was talking to her, and I didn't really know what. For some reason I assumed they were friends, or for some reason I actually in my head had built this narrative that this was her sister, and then the woman came up to me and was like, hey, I just watched the show. You did a great job, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. Ready to do she's like, I'm Amanda. And I'm like, oh, nice to meet you, Amanda. Expecting this was going to be a compliment conversation where she just kind of told me how great I did. Yeah. And and she was like, you know, you're very funny. You have a great like read of the room. Like you did great. I love most of your jokes. I'm not going to say but. And I'm not going to say but. And then she went on to say, however, like I like am like I served in the military, and I just want you to know that like my nephew was in the military, and my nephew is as gay as the day is long, and he volunteered to be in the military, and it's not a draft thing, and it's not something you have to choose to do, and the military is very patriarchal, and then I was like, then I realized I'm like, oh no, I am like in a situation where I am being lectured to about this, and like about like our conversation. I just remember thinking like in the conversation, she wasn't honestly mean. She was obviously very emotional. She seemed like frustrated, and she just seemed like emotional and frantic. And I was talking to her, and I remember thinking like, one, don't apologize for the joke because you're not sorry. And I'm not sorry about saying the joke. And two, she was like, I was like, don't tell her you're going to change the joke because I'm not going to change the joke. And like, I was like, how do I tell her that I don't like agree with her or share her concerns, but like also be like empathetic about like her, like, you know, how she feels about it. And then I said, I was like, I know there's not a draft right now. And she's like, well, not right now. There's never going to be a draft. I'm like, well, you don't know that. I'm like, there definitely was. Then it went. Then, you know, drafts come back, and like they could happen again easily. Like another draft could happen. And like the whole joke is basically me saying that like I don't think gay people or queer people should serve in the military, and that's like the one thing I agree with like the right on, is that like I don't think
you just don't want to,
I don't want and then she's like shh, and then I'm like, but there could be a draft, and she's like, no, and I'm like, well, there could be, like, what if we went into World War III? And she's like, well, yeah, we actually, then she started talking about all these tensions we have with all these countries, and she's like, this is happening in Sudan and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, okay, so you're like, so there could be a draft, and she's like, yeah, there could be a draft. And she's like, but still, like my nephew volunteered. And I'm like, and I wanted to tell her, like, I really, like, I have family who served in the military. Like, I mean, I guess everyone does. I mean, we live in America. So, like, you guys have family that served in the military? Yes. Yeah, okay. Everyone does.
Everyone in the room.
But, like, I was like, my grandpa did, you know. Mm-hmm. And so, like, it's not like against you or your service or your nephew and his service. I was just like, I just feel that like the military is like the organization like doesn't treat veterans well, doesn't treat like the people who serve well. I don't think that like, you know, it's helpful to these people, and I think that it's not really often like in people's best interests, and that it's kind of like, you know, about corporate greed and like, you know, the military industrial complex and stuff. And then she's like, oh yeah, completely, it's modern day slave labor. She's like, and then she was like, yeah, it's like it's just like for the interests of like super rich people to like sell weapons, and like that's why we get into like wars, and there's a reason they target low income neighborhoods. But she said the reason you would never think about going into the military is because you've never been in that situation to where you had to. And I'm like, well, you don't know me. Like, yeah, you don't know like what my situation's like. And I'm like I had to, I guess she assumed because I like live in Chicago now that like I have money or come from, I'm not from Chicago. I recently had a pretty good job, and like I, you know, but like I had to drop out of college because I didn't have enough money to go to college. So I'm like, so from that perspective, I'm like, I definitely I definitely understand why that would be appealing to people, and like what, like I remember the military coming into our school, like in high school, and you know, giving us the pitch, and even I was like, somebody who would never serve in the military.
Yeah.
Even I was like, free college? Like, is there a way I could like be in the military without being in the military? Yeah, you know.
When the thing is, it's like, I think like the big underlying point of what happened here, like that we discussed in the car, is it's like, I think that this is what happens when people project their personal trauma onto a joke that is about a larger issue. Because it's like nothing you're saying on stage is a direct attack on that woman or her nephew or anyone in the, like, but also it's like you're constructing a joke in a way that's playful and fun and not getting on stage and being like, I think the whole military is bad. Because like, you're immediately going to isolate the audience if you put it that way. You can't put it that way. Yeah. But it's like you're shining a light on that.
Right.
And by like kind of going in the back door. And I think it's like,
right,
it's
the back
easy.
door.
A bottom in the back door.
Like a gay joke because I talk about fucking and so what was confusing to me at a certain point is I'm like, you're saying that the military is patriarchal. You were disabled during service. Your nephew was disabled during service in the military. You're saying that they don't do a lot to like protect you or to like make your life easier as a veteran who like went through intense trauma and like sacrificed like your physical ability to be in the military. And you know, you say it's just for like huge corporate interests and that they like treat you. I'm like, I have a hard time understanding what part of the joke specifically she was mad at, because that to me was like, I'm like, I feel like we're on the same side. And like I just think that like the military organization is very abusive, and like it's not something that I would wish upon somebody, and definitely not something I'd wish upon myself. And that's what the joke is about, because it's confusing to me, because for so long I feel like don't ask, don't tell, and like queer people serving in the military and like trans people and like gay people, and like, you know, that was like a centerpiece of like the gay rights movement when I was growing up. Like I felt like it was marriage equality was like number one, and then number two was like don't ask, don't tell being repealed and stuff, and that being like, and that was always confusing to me, because that didn't feel like a right that I felt was productive, definitely not to be a centerpiece of the movement, because I'm like, it feels like we're, you know, I mean, obviously, like the truth is, I don't think straight people should have to serve in the military either.
True. I mean, yeah, it's and
it's a very complicated issue, and you know, a joke simplifies it, but like,
yeah, and it's the same thing as like, I mean, I think of like, I worked with this comedian Levi in Texas, and he does a joke about like partying and like drug use, I think. And this woman came up to him after the show and like tears in her eyes. She's like, my son died from an overdose, and I can't believe you would joke about something like that, and like stormed out. And it's a thing where it's like, his joke had nothing to do with her son, but it's just like the topic itself. It almost reminds me of like, you know, when like, well, I don't know how you are with your siblings, but it's like, if you have
only child.
No, only child. So yeah, I was like, I don't even think you have siblings. And I was like, honestly, that tracks for you. But and I say that with all the love in my heart. But I do think it's like, if you have a family member though, or like your mom or your, and you're like, like when she does this, it's so irritating, or da 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 da. Like you can talk about it because you know that thing. But it's almost like if somebody else were to talk about your sister, or somebody else were to talk about your mom, you're like, well, hey now, you don't know what you're talking. I feel like it's almost that. I feel like she almost was like, didn't think that. Well, then, because you're not in the military, you shouldn't be able to talk about it. But it's like, you guys essentially agree, which you ended up finding out.
We essentially agree at the end of the day, because you know, like so that's what my joke is. I guess, you know, the joke is about like some of the things that like Democrats and like, I'm not going to say like liberals or left, but like Democrats specifically are fighting for don't actually seem like they're in the best interest of like
people,
queer people and gay people. And I know that that's like also difficult, because if you are in a small town, maybe the only path you have to getting a college education is through military service. And so now if that's not like available to like queer people, you know, so I know it's like a complicated thing for sure. But like at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if the situation is just for us to ignore it and be like, yeah, gay people need to be in the military, and like that, I just get scared like there's going to be a draft someday, and it's like then you're placed in the situation where like you're around like a bunch of people who are, she says, patriarchal, and patriarchal is obviously so deeply connected to homophobia, you know what I mean, like,
oh, absolutely.
And it's like, you know, like who are sexist and homophobic, where you feel afraid, you know what I mean? That's scary. And then you're putting your life at risk to, you know, and a part of the joke that I cut was, I say like I don't want the right, you know, I get that like the people on the right the Republicans don't like want us to have the right to die for oil, but at the same time, you know what I mean? Like, because that's what it feels like sometimes. And also it feels like so many of these perks that they put in the military, like free college education, are something that people should be able to get without being in the military. Well, and I think that's a big part of the reason that we aren't able to like push for free college. I mean, like because the military industrial complex is lobbying for us not to have free college so they can use that as a recruitment tool.
Well, and basically, like, I mean, all I was going to add is essentially that it's just like you look at this like umbrella issue of like the military being homophobic, but it's this bigger issue of like the patriarchy being homophobic, and then this even bigger issue of like, because of capitalism, there's this intersection of like, if we don't let gay people join the military, they have to pay for college, which feeds these bigger corporations. And if we like make, you know, college free if you join the military, like it's all of these things ultimately go back to the larger issue of capitalism,
of like corporate greed, and like our wars being tied to money and stuff. And like
money, I mean, I do not think money is inherently evil. It's what people are doing with money that is inherently evil in this country, and it creates all of these like socioeconomic issues and divides. And I think honestly, like with you and Amanda, I think that the disconnect and the divide was what did I say?
You said her name, which I never said.
No, you did say it earlier.
Did I?
You did say Amanda earlier. Yeah,
I did.
And now we've said it like 8 times. So
damn, sorry.
But
sorry,
Amanda. Yeah, I was like, sorry. I was like, I'm not the first one to say it, but
okay, well, I mean, there are a lot of Amandas.
Yeah, it could literally be anybody.
But like, then she also told me to like join a bunch of libertarian Facebook groups because she's like, yeah, they'll tell you everything you need. I know.
Yeah, her face.
She's like, you need to join like all these like libertarian Facebook groups and like get in with the libertarian group chats and stuff because they're telling the truth about the military industrial complex. And what I ended up telling her was, I was like, I'm not going to change anything I said because I don't think anything I said was offensive or it's not something I won't stand behind. But maybe like there's more in the joke that I could add to like talk about the military industrial complex and maybe the bigger thing in a funny way, you know. And that's like really hard to talk about such like a complicated issue. And like
I just wanted, because like what I was trying to get at is like, I do think the issue with the two of you is more of a socioeconomic thing. I think she felt like you're maybe being classist, and I don't think that was your goal, but I think that's like because of her preconceived notions about you being from a metropolitan area, she assumed like, oh, like you make more money than me or you have more status than me to be making this commentary. Whereas it's like, ultimately, I think that that's how they kind of, if we're all the worker ants and they're the grasshoppers, using the Bug's Life metaphor, that's how they pit us against each other. Because it's like, if she thinks that you have more than her and you think that she's like a libertarian weirdo, that it's like you are in discord, when it's like, really, I think we could all unite against the same larger issue, which is these big box corporations and just capitalistic greed in general. I think is what's creating a lot of these problems. Right,
completely. I mean, it's a huge systemic issue that like the idea of fighting for the rights for gay people in the military, it feels like blind to like a lot of bigger issues, which is kind of what my joke is about. And like you know, and so that's what I said to her, and we hugged it out, and we had a good conversation, and she was very emotional, and I don't actually think she totally knew, and I mean, I probably like the core of it was like feeling like, well, you never had to even consider being in the military, so like, and that's just not true. I mean, like, not that, I mean, it's true that I would never have been in the military. People were really pushing it for me, and I definitely have like some privileges in terms of like my education. I didn't have like a private education ever, but like I had access to good public education, which I think is like, you know, a privilege. And So I understand that, but I think that she didn't even really know what she was mad at me about, and that's like, she didn't really have like, because I didn't say that there was a draft, I didn't say anything incorrect, and actually we agreed on most things. But I also think that like when you're in the military and when you have family in the military, you feel like, it felt like I was maybe attacking to her nephew and her, and saying like that, and that's not what it was either, you know. And it's not, because I know that like people serving in the military, a lot of them don't have other options. A lot of them think what they're doing is heroic because that's what they've been told their whole life. And it's hard too to be like, and I this is kind of what I felt, but I didn't want to say this to her because I didn't want to hurt her feelings. But like, I'm like, I'm like, why would you want somebody to have gone through what you went through and what like your nephew went through? You know?
Yeah, it's that age old, like, it's the same way of like, at least my parents' generation, it was the mindset of like, oh, well, I lived through it, so they can too. And it's like, no, it's like, how do we make it better for the next generation? How do we build a better world? We shouldn't inflict the same trauma we went through on the next generation just because, well, I had to, like, no, that's not kind. That's not thoughtful. It's not making the world a better place. It's making it fucking worse, or making it, at the very least, continue to be as bad as it is. And it's just like, it's just not productive.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, the person, I feel bad that we said her name, the person in question was very lovely and like nice, and I do think that she was probably just triggered and like has some unhealed trauma there, but ultimately, like, you're not going to heal that for her, and your joke is not the reason for that being there.
Right. I would agree. And I would say that, like, also, I'll say that, you know, there were times when I felt a little trapped in that combo and a little like nervous and scared. And I definitely would say I disagree with her on the libertarian thing. But I could deal with Amanda's all day. You know what I mean? If somebody comes up to me, and you know, the thing is, when I'm performing that joke, that's a big difference. That is a difference between performing that joke in Chicago versus performing it on the road. And typically, I know there are people in the service who have laughed at that joke, or who are veterans who've laughed at that joke, because, I mean, you know, when you're performing in small town, usually that joke kills. I very rarely had somebody criticize me about it, even like people who are like MAGA people, who are like, you know, people who've like served the military. Usually they'll tell me like, I still thought that joke was funny, you know, and so like, but I like in Chicago, I think, you know, a lot of these people have office jobs, or they don't have office jobs, but like maybe, you know, they like work at a coffee shop, and the reason they're in Chicago is because they want to be in a big city to like be around artsy people or be you know what I mean? So like the people you're performing in Chicago, they've never considered being in the military. A lot of them probably have never considered being in the, I'm generalizing, but like I could perform to like 40 people in Logan Square, and none of them could have served in the military or been veterans. Whereas if I'm performing in a small town, there's veterans in the audience. There's just no doubt about it, you know?
Well, and I think the part of that as well is just like, what when we talked, again, I feel bad because we did talk about this in the car on the way back as well, like whether we like it or not, and as, you know, faux lower classes people may try to appear in some of the neighborhoods in this city, there is a certain demographic of people who live in Chicago and New York and LA and any major city who have literally never wanted for anything in their entire life.
Absolutely.
And they can put on a pair of Doc Martens and a ripped jean, but it's like, no, your parents are paying your rent. And it's like, I'm not judging you, but it's all about like, it's like I was saying, like, money isn't inherently evil, it's what you do with it. I think it's like really difficult because people who have wealth and like have status, they almost have never had to empathize with people less fortunate than them unless they literally, it's a muscle that you have to work. And it's like, if you've been there, it's very easy to understand and know what that's like because you've lived it. But it's like, I think a lot of people who live in cities, they'll share the fundraiser posts on their story, and they'll, you know, but they don't, I don't think that they like truly empathize with. And the thing is like, as much as I think, like, as much as it makes me mad that there are like lower class white people who have gone down the MAGA route because they're disenfranchised, it's like, that's what happens when you get stuck in this little bubble and you don't have access to another way of thinking. And I think it's like, ultimately, like, poor liberals and poor liberals and like poor Republicans, it's two different routes that are created by the same disenfranchisement.
Well,
the same lack of resources.
What's happened, I think, writ large, is that like over time, like a long time, and this really started to change over the 80s and like Reaganomics, of like, for a long time, like the Democrats like were the union, was the labor force, like that's what they ran on, was like getting labor rights, was like, you know, like was things for working class people. But then as times have changed, you know, like the focus, it's become that like Democrats and Republicans both economically are not that different.
Good. Yeah,
Sometimes like fiscally it doesn't feel like Democrats are fighting for like things, or they're constantly making compromises and they're like getting donations from the same people in the same groups, and then it comes down to just social issues. So it's like the Democrats and the Republicans like are hugging each other in so many economic and fiscal issues, but then like on social issues it becomes like straight white people like versus like now the Democrats are like, are trying to like do like queer people, or are trying to like include queer people and like people of color and so I think what's hard is that like white people don't feel like, poor white people don't feel that like the Democrats are representing their interests, and they don't understand that like Republicans are even further away from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so it becomes a thing where it's like you're voting for like two people who neither of them would ever vote for universal health care, but one of them feels like they would literally kill you, like literally kill gay people, and one of them's like, oh no, I think gay people should have rights. And so like that, I feel like that's like I think that like, I don't know. I feel that like a lot of like poor white people feel disenfranchised by like Democrats in politics. And I think the truth is that like they don't understand that like fighting for the rights of people of color and queer people and like women do not take away from your rights. They don't take away from your rights. But there are like big problems that both the Democrats and the Republicans are not fighting for actual like people to have money, to have health care. And the thing is like, you're like, having money is not the problem, and that's true. Having money isn't the problem, but the it's not the having, it's the taking. You know what I mean? Because I wouldn't care if there were billionaires if everybody in the USA had health care, shelter, and food, and the world wasn't dying in a climate crisis that was caused by like super rich people not giving a fuck about anything else at all.
And
like, like if everybody had enough, then some people having more doesn't matter as much.
I think that's what I mean when I say like money isn't inherently evil. It's what people do with money. It's the people who are hoarding the resources, and then it's almost like they hoard the resources and they pit us against each other. With social issues while ignoring the larger economic and climate issues. Not the social issues are absolutely important. I'm not saying they're not important. Absolutely, everybody should have rights, but it's like by like making people who have more in common with one another than they have different, each other's enemies, it allows them to behind the scenes pull off all this other bullshit. And not actually fucking fix anything.
We're putting the focus on the wrong things. I mean, but it's hard because, like, because I feel like truly, like, and I think we're seeing this in like elections now of that, like people in like Republican states and like who are traditionally conservative, they actually don't. The policies that Republicans push are not popular. Like taking away Social Security and Medicare is not popular.
It's not popular.
Like taking away abortion rights is not popular. People like kind of thought that they like, oh yeah, I'm pro. I feel like, I mean, there are people who are definitely adamantly pro-life, but there are like a lot of people who I feel like are like, I'll vote for Republicans, but because abortion's safe. But like they don't realize like, no, these people will take everything from you, and they're not helping you. You know.
And I think it's like, I think the thing that makes me so sad is it's like I think that they try to put the emphasis on issues that are caused by this bigger issue. Like this big, huge issue of the capitalistic greed, the take without giving anything back is what this country's founded on, from, fucking taking the land from Native Americans to disenfranchising and building the country off of the backs of slavery, has created this monopoly and created this whole thing. And so it's like, if we fight about all the stuff that's down here that's caused by this, they never have to fix this, when it's like, this is what's causing all of this. And it makes me so mad.
Because racism is directly is a result of capitalism. It really is, because like they're using these social issues to push unpopular economic policy. And Yeah, it's crazy. But I could deal with like Amanda's all day, and I don't have a problem with her at all. She was very nice about it. She just discussed it with me. We talked, we hugged it out. She bought me a drink, I think. Like, but like, but like it does get scary performing in like rural areas when the country is so divided. Like, and I've had people storm the stage on me in Chicago because I talk about being gay. Like, I get nervous, like, Amanda got super emotional, but like, you know, the way Amanda reacted when she was super emotional was just like talking to me and feeling she needed to discuss this with me. But it's like, what if you're in a situation, you have like a veteran who has a gun. We're in a state that like it's super, you know, everyone has guns, who like, you know, has mental illness that was never, you know, never supported, never dealt with. Nobody gave him the resource to do that. And like, that could be a situation where like something violent could happen that like, you know, I could be put in danger. And that's something that I do think about a lot. And I get actually really scared about when I go out on the road.
And I don't blame you.
I don't ever, I feel like it would never stop me because I mean, I've been I sometimes I get scared in those situations almost every single time before I go on stage, like more so than like typical, because I just like I've had people like yell at me on stage and come up on stage and threaten me, and I felt like fear, like, but I'm like I would rather do it and like live with that fear than like, you know, stop talking about it, you know, and that's like that, but I and you know, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and they're like, I told her that I might add another part of the joke to try and like say, like include people in the military, like people who've served, not like the people like the military industrial complex, but like the people who've served in the military, and like, you know, maybe there's a way that I can include them more. For sure. And it's not because I like want to like succumb to their will, but one, I want people to know that one, I'm not making fun of your service. Two, I want to feel safe doing that joke, you know? And I maybe there isn't a three.
No, I was gonna say all I wanted to say to you, because I think everything that we've talked about is really important in this episode, and I do think we have to do the song in a little bit, but I just wanted to say to you, like, as scary as it is and as difficult as it is, and I know that you're like, oh, I can tell when somebody's mad versus when somebody enjoys it, like, there are people in those towns that you're going to who are like one of like maybe one of one or one of five queer people in that community, and they need to hear you say that. And I know it sounds like it sounds so hippy dippy or like gold at the end of the rainbow of me, but it's like, I'm sure like you will have people when you go to those towns who are like, thank fucking God there are like there's somebody who looks like me, who thinks like me, who talks like me, who's lived my experience, and it kind of almost like is a reminder of like, it gets better outside of this tiny town in Wisconsin. There's a whole world out there where people are loved and accepted and gay, and you know,
and that you can be gay and like, you know, be bold and be fearless and like say like things on stage that are bold and scary, and that like, you know, that it's like, I get nervous. I'm like with the laws that are like being passed in Nashville. I mean, the thing is, once again, like, I don't think that like Republican politics or politicians are popular in this country, but the way that this country's set up, the way that the power is dispersed, like, you know, we could be like an election away from the House, the Senate, and like the presidency all being Republicans, not because people want that, but because that's how it's set up.
Equally spread out.
Well, gerrymandering and like the Supreme Court is so permissive, and like you know, like, and they've been fighting for power for so long, and it feels like it gets frustrating because it feels like Democrats don't fight back so often, and but like I'd say always vote. That's like that may not be enough, but that's like the brushing your teeth of like politics and activism. It's just like vote. It's like vote to the left, like vote in the primaries, vote in the local elections. It all really matters. But I mean, there's much more you can do than vote. Donate, you know.
But that's the bare minimum. Brushing your teeth.
Yeah,
we'd love you to floss too.
Right.
If we floss, it's not going to be as fucked up of a dental appointment.
Yeah.
but at least brush your teeth.
Yeah. And yeah, so like I'm like it could, you know, you don't know, like the Republican frontrunners are Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, who are incredibly terrifying, evil, disgusting, pathetic piece of shit people who should be on the street eating dog shit. Fuck them. But like DeSantis like is banning books in like Florida. Like, this is Nazi shit. Like,
yeah,
I mean, it's insane. It's terrifying. It's terrifying, scary, and it's like the idea that, like, I mean, that he could become president. We see what the House is willing to do. We see what the Senate is willing to do. They will not stop this shit.
Yeah, they
will fall in line and do the evil shit that, like, whatever authoritarian leader they have does their bidding. And I don't know, it could be illegal for me to be gay and perform in spaces like that. I mean, you know, there are a lot of comedians in Chicago who couldn't perform in Nashville because of the laws that are going on, you know? Anyway.
And I mean, yeah, it's hard because it's like, I don't want to be like, let's start a song. You know what I mean? It feels like very and now it's time for the song. But no, I mean, all we can do at this point is brush our teeth. I think the thing is like getting everybody, because if it's it's like, it makes me think of with Hillary and Donald back in 2016. Like, we could all brush our teeth and we could still be fucked, but it's like, at the very least, we should try to get everybody to brush their teeth.
Yeah. Wow.
It's feeling like an episode of Chicago over here, but
yeah.
Whenever you're ready, Becca. Libertarian Party is right about everything. Just kidding, please brush your teeth. The Libertarian Party's right about everything. Just kidding, please brush your teeth.
Ooh, the Libertarians, they wanna abolish all government so that corporations can rule. But don't you think that would kind of true? Don't corporations already kind of rule everything? Maybe we should get money out of politics and work to make sure we have a more representative democracy. Then we could see. Don't be a libertarian, brush your teeth. Oh, I think you got some gunk, but you can put in the junk, because we don't need Trump, who is backed by people like the Koch brothers, who are libertarians. Libertarians have done so much to enable far-right politics to become normalized. But they're right about everything, and by right about everything, I mean the far right. They're far right about everything.
Far right about everything. Everything. It's like that meme of the person wearing a mask, and you lift up the mask and it's another thing, only the mask is Libertarian Party, and underneath the mask it's just the far right party. It's just the far right party. It's just the far right party. Along with Republicans. Along with Republicans. Libertarians are just Republicans or anarchists. But the thing is, if you get rid of government, another power will rise. And it might not be as nice. It'll probably be as nice. A lot less nice to be anything but a straight, white, God-fearing person in that country. Who has money? Who has money? Who has money? Not me. Who has money? Not me. Not me. That was a very bright and inspirational song to end the episode. Yeah, everybody, you can catch us at the next one. I'm Jamie Schreiner. This is Becca Kenny. We had the amazing Becca Nix Tham on the keys for that beautiful, sad song about the state of America right now.
Yeah.
And we have our producer, Christine Ferrera, in the building with us. We are going to get ready to record our next episode with, you guessed it, the amazing Becca Nix Tham. Right now. Bye.
Bye.
This is the big finish at Lincoln Lodge. We're about to get it on the show. So come on, everybody, and get the show on the road.
Let's get it on the road.